After Val-Zod's parents, who were scientists, got executed for standing up against injustice and a courageous confrontation against those in power, Kal-El parents, Jor-El and Laura, would adopt him as their own, as poor Val-Zod was now an orphan. However, a light would shine when he met Kara Zor-El, who was Kal-El's cousin and was also left an orphan and was taken in by the House of El. Nevertheless, that fateful day will come when their planet Krypton will be minutes away from exploding. So Kara and Val gave their last goodbyes, not knowing what direction their paths might lead or if that very path would have them cross again, as their homeworld was now no more. And so Val-Zod, Kara, Kal-El, and another unknown child managed to escape towards Earth. Through his trip, Val was educated by his parents' knowledge recording in his capsule, with hours of teaching on how war and violence were unjustifiable, causing Val-Zod to grow up and become a peace lover. Now on Earth, he would be found by Terry Sloan, who gave him asylum to protect him from the outside world, as he would grow up in complete solitude, cut off from society. And with good reason, as the world was being invaded by forces of the god of tyranny known as Darkseid, sending his parademons against Earth's heroes, notably Kal-El, also known as Superman, along with Kara, who was going by the title Supergirl. Meanwhile, Darkseid's military commander, Lord Steppenwolf, will be the one to end the existence of the Amazon warrior, Wonder Woman, while next, Superman would apparently be killed by enormous bursts of inner energy. At some point after, unbeknownst to the world, Darkseid, using Superman's DNA, would manage to clone him in every aspect, calling his new creation Brutal, codename Bizarro. And as you expected, he was hell, as he punished Alan Scott, aka Green Lantern. But this time Steppenwolf got into the action, as they stumped him out cold.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
However, unbeknownst to Steppenwolf, that would be his last day of terror, as Brutal will betray him by vaporizing him off the face of the planet, while next revealing his identity and proclaiming Hail Darkseid, as the man of terror, brutalizing anyone who dared to challenge his reign, like Khalid bin Hassan, aka Dr. Fate, for example, who got pulverized in one of the worst ways until he was luckily saved by the Flash, Jason Garrett, who also would get it by feeling Brutal's Omega Beam attack and next got his ankle snapped for good measures, as Brutal after captured more members of the Wonders of the World. Moreover, the master hacker, James Olsen, will reveal to Thomas Wayne, aka Batman, along with Aquawoman, Morella, Red Tornado, Lois Lane, about the suspected alien, Terry Sloan, was hiding in the underground facility, who they would eventually locate and find Val-Zod, who was more than welcoming to his new visitors and showed great hospitality, when suddenly he fell ill and collapsed to the ground, which Batman would realize it was because of his kryptonite and his utility belt, revealing to them that Val-Zod was indeed Kryptonian. Meanwhile, Brutal would get the world's attention by dropping the Washington Monument on top of the White House, as he announced Darkseid planet, known as Apocalypse, was dying, and Earth would be its replacement, as the parademons already began to terraform the planet with fire pits of engines of war and torture, where armors and weapons are forged, while only the strong would survive on New Apocalypse, as millions of Earthlings already died. Following this, they would move Val-Zod to the Batcave, where they would encounter other members of the Wonders of the World, like Hawkgirl, Kendra Monez Sanders, and Connor Hawk, when Val-Zod would begin to have a panic attack from all the happenings that was going on. Luckily, Red Tornado would be the one to put him at ease. However, Batman wasn't keen to Earth's only hope of survival, afraid of the outside world. Meanwhile, Brutal ordered the parademons to do away all Earth's religions, places of worship, and anything that was associated with the belief of their god, as that title now belongs to Darkseid. Thereafter, Brutal headed towards Moscow and quickly did away the final command post of the world's army, severing Albert Pratt, aka Adam, arm off, and knocked him out with it in a fatality type move as he flew away, when he later noticed a space ark filled with the world's most wealthiest and powerful, escaping Earth to head to the stars. So Brutal canceled their trip by sending them tumbling right back down to Earth where they came from. While back at the Batcave, Red Tornado will convince Val-Zod to go outside with her and absorb the yellow sun's light in order for his powers to develop. Elsewhere, Darkseid Goon, Bedlam, mind-controlled Terry Sloan and Michael Holt to help create a boom tube large enough to push Earth into Apocalypse's galaxy, as they are two of the world's most brilliant minds. Coincidentally, Bedlam will find out and tell Brutal that Terry Sloan was hiding a Kryptonian after reading his mind. While surveillance footage will next show them, Val-Zod may be hiding out in the destroyed Gotham City. Meanwhile, Red Tornado was teaching a now excited Val-Zod on how to use his powers of flight. Although he was against being prepped to become a weapon, he grasped the opportunity of a lifetime by soaring into the clouds, seeing beyond the bubble he was used to. However, that blissful moment would be cut short as a flock of parademons were spotted by Hawkgirl, heading their way, so they quickly attempted to get Val-Zod out of harm's way. Nevertheless, things weren't that easy, as they were accompanied by Brutal, whose main objective was to get a hold of Val-Zod and put him under the dirt along with the rest of his oppositions. Luckily for Val-Zod, Red Tornado would distract Brutal from doing so by revealing herself as Lois Lane, as she next demanded he release him, which he would hesitantly do, when suddenly Red Tornado was attacked from behind by a parademon. Furious, Brutal turned it into ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and when he got physical with Red Tornado, thinking it might be a trick, surprisingly, Val-Zod was ready to throw hands with Brutal if it came to it. But Red Tornado intervened and told Hawkgirl to leave with Val-Zod, as she left with Brutal. However, they still would be attacked by the parademons, and now a brave Val-Zod didn't hesitate to protect Hawkgirl, even though he didn't have full control of his powers, when suddenly they were surprisingly aided by a reborn Nicola Scott, and next escorted back to the Batcave, which eventually would be attacked by the parademons and their warhounds. Immediately after, Sandman Wesley Dodds would appear through a portal, directing them to enter so they could head to Themyscira, just after Batman detonated the Batcave to blow up, which took out the parademons. Now in Themyscira, it would be brought to attention that Connor Hawk hadn't survived the attack at the Batcave, which Batman would unleash his anger out on Val-Zod for not single-handedly taking out the threat, thus securing Connor's survival. Thereafter, James Olsen would console Val-Zod before questioning him about what he was hiding beneath his torn sweater, which Val-Zod would eventually reveal the S on his chest, which is a symbol of the House of El. Elsewhere in Smallville, Brutal was having an awkward dinner with his supposedly parents, when things went left with John Kent, who was tired of pretending something wasn't wrong with Brutal, as their son would have never did the atrocities that was taking place. So John denounced the name Darkseid, which angered Brutal, who went on to end John's life, causing a now devastated Louis and Martha to reject him as the Clark Kent he believes he is. So a saddened Brutal quickly and violently left to finish Darkseid's plan, which was done, as the gateway to hand over Earth to Darkseid was ready. So our heroes now needed to head towards Switzerland, to the source of the gateway, in order to prevent Earth from being sucked through space by destroying the Super Collider machine. So Dr. Fate, in a last-ditch effort to convince Val-Zod to be the hero he was meant to be, put the helmet of Nabu on him, so he could see the outcome of Earth if he chose to stand by and do nothing. Nevertheless, Val-Zod accepted his mantle and made his way off to save the world. Meanwhile, Green Lantern was in space desperately fighting to hold Earth in place, until Brutal showed up to stop him. However, Val-Zod was right behind him to stop him, as the battle for Earth commenced. As they crashed back down to Earth, Val-Zod was still reluctant to engage in battle, but also made it clear he wasn't going to stand by and watch Brutal destroy the world. However, Val-Zod let it slip that his friends were on the same mission to save the world, so Brutal zoomed off to stop them from destroying the Super Collider. Subsequently, Red Tornado was there to intercept him from going any further, as she was buying time until Val-Zod attacked Brutal from behind, crashing into the battlefield, only for Brutal to once again get the upper hand and begun to pummel Val-Zod. Surprisingly, Val-Zod began to overpower Brutal when suddenly his hand began to crack, which both men became confused to what was happening. Then Brutal began to suddenly fall apart, revealing he wasn't a real Superman after all, but only an abomination of the real thing. So Red Tornado blew away the bizarre being into the wind, thus finally ending his reign of terror. Furthermore, our heroes were going on a new mission to stop the fire pits and rescue any survivors, when they were approached by a returning Supergirl who was lost in the multiverse and now going by Power Girl, along with Huntress Helena Wayne, Thomas Wayne's granddaughter, over the attires they were wearing, believing they were more imposters until they were formally introduced to clear up all the confusion, when abruptly, Darkseid's powerful, all-female warriors known as Furies began to rise out of each fire pit. As our heroes engaged in a fierce fight with the Fury Kal-El, who gave them a run for their money, and then hypnotized the female heroes to go against the males, before she was suddenly summoned to join her sisters. Right after, our heroines would be brought back to their senses, as they all next went deep into the fire pits to root out the cause. However, they unexpectedly found a cloning facility of Superman's, which the dead cell corpses would break out and attack them after responding to electrical impulse, while next, Val-Zod prevented Kara from getting hit, which turned her on to that Kryptonian black chocolate man of steel. Meanwhile, Batman constructed a device that caused the electromagnetic pulse to disrupt the corpse's neural implants. Then soon after, Val-Zod and Kara will find Kal-El's symbol of the House of El being kept as a token of his defeat. However, they would inadvertently find the real Kal-El, who was strapped to a contraption, so they immediately freed him. But not long after, they would be attacked by one of Darkseid's men called Darkseid, who turned Huntress into an obscure creature as they were fighting another that could self-multiply. Unsurprisingly, Kal-El sacrificed himself by using his now corrupted DNA that neutralizes the copying process and now acts as a poison to the clones, which would and did end them when he connected himself to the entire Labyrinth network, thus saving the day one last time before he perished, and next giving a proper burial to send him off in peace. Succeeding this, our heroes would then go after the Furies, which Val-Zod would take on the Fury Kal-El again, who he would impressively make short work of, before rapidly shutting her down. Meanwhile, Helena, who was turned into a monstrous creature, and now part of the Furies, would also eventually be taken down, and after, turned back into her normal self, when suddenly, Darkseid's concubine, the Fury, Death, gave birth to their child, the death spawn of Apocalypse, who next immediately headed within the Earth. Moreover, a portion of our heroes would after make their way into outer space, all the way to planet Apocalypse, to take the fight to Darkseid himself, who was more than a force to be reckoned with, as Val-Zod and Kara had no chance against him as his might was too great, and all was eventually lost as Darkseid finally achieved his goal and took hold of Earth to make it his new planet. Shockingly, our heroes would be mysteriously teleported to another dimension as Val-Zod was taken away from Kara by the Avatar Ellis at the behest of his master Brainiac to collect warriors and a city of their world inhabitants from their dying realities to fight in his experimental tournament to determine which of the cities each group of heroes who's representing will survive. Luckily, Batman will motivate Val-Zod to break free after they were captured, which Val-Zod would then attack Ellis full force, fighting like an enraged madman, where Ellis had no chance of winning, so he quickly retreated within the planet. Thereafter, alliances would eventually form with alternate heroes, and heroes would then go against other heroes in an all-out bout for survival. Inevitably, all heroes from parallel worlds would join forces and eventually convince Brainiac to send them to their respective worlds, while Val-Zod and team will be sent to a new world to establish. However, Richard Grayson will be their new Batman, as Thomas Wayne sacrificed his life during the events of the convergence. And as fate would have it, Kara and Val-Zod would once again reunite not long after, and thereafter build their own city, Neotropolis. Surprisingly though, not all the citizens of their city was content, as there was a disorder due to non-recognition of authority, which our heroes would next find out Terry Sloan was a prime suspect to what was going on. And when they confronted him, he used reverse psychology and revealed it was Val-Zod who built the fire pits for him and discovered how to detonate them, thus upsetting Kara since he never told her about it, even though he didn't understand what he was building. She quickly left as tears formed in her eyes, and hours later, she would officially end their romantic relationship, calling it quits. Not long after, they would find out a now evil and powerful James Olsen, calling himself Dr. Impossible, killed Terry Sloan and now is wreaking havoc on the population. Luckily, Val-Zod and Kara would work together and put an end to his tirade, as Val-Zod and Kara would next remain mutual friends. That being said, Val-Zod is DC Comics' Superman of Earth 2.